Have you ever held a secret?
Yes.
Now think, why do we hold secrets? Oftentimes, it's because of the shame, the embarrassment, the fear of getting in trouble, or ruining a relationship with someone. Now, I want you to ask yourself, what would happen if I were to share my secret? What consequences would I face? And in the person I am today, be different without it? These are questions I've asked myself many, many times in my 18 years, which have come to define who I am today. The sound of my father's Ford F-250 wakes me up in the morning. The breeze rustling through my morning hair as the unfaltering gold and green mountains fade into the distance. As I'm heating up leftover chicken and cabbage from last night's dinner, my mother walks into the kitchen and directs me. "When you finish eating, go water the girls, please." I give her a nod as I'm way too focused on adding oil to the pan. And as I finish up breakfast and make my way over to the garden, I start to untangle the hose when I notice a lizard sunbathing on a nearby rock. I turn on the faucet, and a stream of hot water bursts out from the end, sparkling in the eyes of summer's gaze. I tend to each plant very carefully. I was taught to nurture them in a very specific way. Not to break a branch or drown them out with water. I nurtured them like this because I couldn't fuck up. Growing up in a community stagnated by drugs, it forces you to grow up fast. Nothing was ever filtered or hidden from me. I saw things for what they were, and everything was as clear as water. From friends getting shot over deals, to others overdosing in their homes. It was common. It was solemn, but it was common. I was taught to lie at a young age for the fear of my father going to jail, losing my family, or losing the wealth that we had. And it scared me. And I'll be honest with everyone here, out of my father's 5 siblings, he and my uncle are the only 2 that haven't been arrested. Growing up as a child, kids often talk about their parents' jobs. What does your dad do? Oh, my dad's a banker. My dad's a businessman. My dad's a doctor. And when it came to me, what was I supposed to say? My dad grows herb? No, I wasn't going to say that. Instead, I lied and I said, yeah, my dad's an architect. So this is me, the grandson of a hippie and the son of a retired reefer grower. In the 60s, my grandmother moved up to southern Humboldt in Northern California with her 6 children. They were hippies that lived in teepees and grew their food off the land. And for my father, it all started with a yellow 125 Yamaha dirt bike. At the age of 12, my father wanted this yellow dirt bike, as all of his other friends had one. So he went to my grandmother, Carol, and he said, Mom, I want this dirt bike. All my other friends have one. And her reply was, we don't have to spare money for that. Who do you think is going to pay for that? If you want it, go make the money yourself. So my father decided to go set up his own little patch of plants tucked away in the woods behind the house. And a couple of days later, a police helicopter flew overhead, scouting for plantations. And unluckily, they happened to come across my grandmother's plants. A couple of cop cars were sent up to the property, and they cut every single plant down, burned everything to the ground. Nothing was left, except for my father's patch that he had grown, which was tucked away out in the woods. So instead of my dad getting that yellow dirt bike he wanted so much, he ended up feeding the family. For the rest of the year, the money that he earned was the money that they lived off of. See, growing up holding a secret, it felt as if the world was heavy on my shoulders. I would never be able to talk about it. It was present at all times, and it made me extremely cautious. I was afraid to speak in fear of the slip of my tongue. So what did I do instead? I chose to stay silent. I chose not to speak. It was the safe route. And yes, I had friends. Yes, I had my connections. And yes, I had people that were close and personal and dear to me. But they didn't know the full story of who I actually was. See, my parents loved their nomadic lifestyle. I often traveled, moved countries, attended different schools. But it was hard making those connections. It would take about a year, and then to deepen that friendship with that person, it would take even longer. So instead, I was quiet, reserved. I minded my own business, because that's how I grew up to be. See, at a young age, I was groomed to keep my mouth shut. I was groomed not to speak, to simply be quiet and listen. But in working with my therapist, I was able to uproot those problems I had, this mental trauma that I was left with. And I realized just how much I was struggling. And I realized that these issues I had left such an impact on me, and I had no clue about it. See, in the beginning of last year, buried deep in my subconscious, I was overwhelmed by sadness. I was overwhelmed by these issues and the anxiety I held, the fear of being true. I was carrying mental trauma I didn't even know I had. See, in 3rd grade, I started to realize just how different the lives of other kids was. And so one day I went home and I told my mom, I want a normal life. Why can't I have what they have? It's not fair. And suddenly, for the next couple of years, when I compared my life to theirs, it seemed completely absurd. It didn't seem right. But only in the past couple of years, I've really realized that all of these crazy experiences I've had and the community I come from is my normal. It's a part of who I am today. And so now when people ask me, who are you? While this single history does not define who I am, it's no longer my enemy. I no longer have to hide it. The war ended when I came to terms with it and lived with it as my friend. So I'm still the son of a retired reefer grower and the grandson of a hippie. But I'm proud. See, in life, there's many small things that we just brush off of our shoulder and we don't put into consideration. But one of those seemingly small things that we hold on to, like my secret, for example, seen from a different perspective, could just transform your life. So really sit down and meditate on it, as my mom would always tell me. Because one of those seemingly small things could just change everything. I was taught the importance of nurturing plants when I was young, but it's only recently that I've realized how to nurture myself. And so standing in front of you all today, I'm still the grandson of a hippie, the son of a retired reefer grower, but I'm a confident young man who owns up to his truth. Thank you.